All right, I'm Aljazeera's Asad Hashim. I'm here with Nasser Weddady, who tweets under the handle WEDAWDY Weddady. Now, Nasser, you raised a very good question during the session earlier, and you were a little angry, I think. Could you tell us a little about what you were angry about?
I think that what was interesting to me is that, first of all, the tone of the conversation is that it was a celebratory tone from people who did not actually take part in these revolutions, who did not provoke them, and ultimately in the past few years were very negative about the people who made these revolutions. It was Mohamed Bouazizi in Sidi Bouzid, Tunisia, who set himself on fire that started all this revolution. It was not some sexagenarians sitting in London who provoked this. And it felt also part of the disconnect was that the majority of the Arab world, people under 30, are the ones who made this change. And part of the demand, they brought down those dictators, but in the process they have brought down also some of the ideological talking points that we heard repeated on the panel. And therefore, I think that it's about time for the Arab intelligentsia to sit down and review the records, because there is a risk that the counter-revolution will come from these very same people who will go on and try to hijack and benefit from something that they didn't make. And that's what was part of my frustration. The second frustration was rather something really maniacal, in the sense that during the Q&A sessions, it felt like you needed to have a PhD and be above age 50 to be able to ask a question. And I thought that's unfair.
Yeah, that actually leads very nicely into my next question, which is, quite aside from, with the forum over here has just begun, but other forums that you've seen and other people who are talking about and the discourse sort of that's arisen around this Arab revolution, do you think that the people who are actually involved in it, mostly young people and just regular folk, do you think their voice is a part of that discourse, or do you think that it's people talking about them rather than...
It's people talking about them, above them. And, for example, when you hear ideologues who belong to various ideological groups trying to frame the demands and the discourse of the youth, it's clear that there is a lot of hijacking going on. When you have someone who is from the generation that failed, not only in doing and providing solutions, but also on the discourse level, trying to take these talking points and act as if they were a stakeholder in provoking these revolutions. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to everyone from all political walks of life, but we have to make the distinction that the discourse of pre-December 17th, 2010, is outdated. And there is a need for a new discourse that accounts for the realities that we're seeing. This is not about entitlement and empowerment. It's actually very pragmatic. It's that for us to see a positive progress towards institutions that guarantee individual rights, that's what the people were demanding. They were not demanding an Islamic state or a Ba'athist state or any of these old ideologies. What they were wanting is full citizenship, guaranteed civil rights, and ultimately to be treated as individuals. None of these old ideologies offered that, and don't even have a blueprint on how to get there.
And how do you feel when, because in the session there were people talking about how countries in the Arab world don't have, I think the translator characterized it as an accumulation of democracy, and so it'll be difficult to set up institutions. So a two-part question. Do you think that that's true, that it will be difficult to set up these democratic institutions? And two, do you think that from the ground up, this groundswell of popular support, that these people will be ready to put in the work to create those institutions as well, or are prepared to do so?
I didn't hear any of these intellectuals make that point when the Berlin Wall fell, about Hungary, Poland, all these Eastern Bloc countries. They were under dictatorship for 50 years, and for all we know, didn't have democratic accumulation. That's a very patronizing tone, and I feel that it is also part of the old ways of not trusting what the people of the region want. Let the people have their say. Please do not try to dictate on them your own worldviews. And I think that nonetheless, within the question, I'd bring it back to the fact that there is a need for those institutions to guarantee individual rights. And again, we have to make a distinction here. This is not about elections per se. North Korea and China have elections. That's not a measure of democracy. Right. Democracy is about individual rights. Citizenship, a contract between the citizen and the state that is based on rights that are universal and also duties of citizenship. And that process, the same way we have Arabs who were able to imagine and dream this revolution. They can very capable of handling their own affairs and drive towards a more positive future. And I would go back again and say, I wish the same concern had been raised when the Berlin Wall fell, when Eastern Europe was getting into its democratic regeneration.
Right. Nasser Weddady, thank you very much.
You're welcome.